James Bond enters the final act of his 24th adventure with a quite literal bang. One for the history books, in fact. Requiring 8,418 litres of kerosene with 33 kilograms of powder explosive, the violent destruction of Ernst Stavros Blofeld's Moroccan lair currently holds the world record for the largest film stunts explosion ever. A tremendous degree of preparation, organisation and filmmaking talent is vital in executing such a phenomenally dangerous film stunt, and Spectre's Big Bang goes off without a hitch. The resulting fireball is undoubtedly an awesome sight to behold, and a tremendous achievement for all involved. Yet what should have been one of the most thrilling and spectacular moments of destruction in James Bond history barely registers at all on an emotional level.
It's not over yet.
Why, despite the crew's amazing efforts in pyrotechnics, does Spectre's Big Bang feel more a damp squib? And what does make a good explosion, if not the size of one's blast? I'm Gareth Green, and today I'm going to be talking about things that go boom. Whether bursting through a wall like an enraged Kool-Aid man or battling space Nazis with laser guns, the Bond filmography is one that is littered with both moments of awesome carnage and awkward cringe. It's a duality that Bond fans have grown used to, especially those of us acquainted to the filmography of one Roger Moore.
You really do have a magnificent abdomen.
But no moment perfectly captures both sides of the coin, quite like this one. Yes, there is a wealth of unintentional hilarity to mine from the James Bond franchise, and perhaps fans will be familiar with a few of the more obvious choices, like this one perhaps, or this one, and yes, even this one. But for me, the explosion that rocks the climax of Spectre's second act ranks above them all. Not because of how badly executed it is, on the contrary, the explosion itself is a marvellous spectacle, but rather because for all of its technical wizardry and carnage, it means little, if anything, at all. And what fragment of a message it appears to have in regards to the character of Bond encapsulates why Spectre's action falls flat, and crucially, why the film fails as a 007 adventure. But before I begin discussing what went wrong with this spectacular dud, let's look at a handful of my favourite movie explosions and ask, what went so right? In reviewing these examples, I discovered that explosions in movies usually fall into three categories, depending on the criteria they fulfill. There are those that serve the characters, others that serve the plot or pace of a piece, and some that have the sole purpose of, well, simply looking cool. Obviously, the most successful of these managed to tick more than one box, if not all of them. For example, Die Hard's endlessly impressive Nakatomi Fireball not only provides audiences with a thrilling set piece to punctuate the finale, but further reinforces John McClane's journey and struggle as a character. It epitomizes the film's theme of an ordinary man out of his depth, forced to think his way out of impossible situations, demonstrated here with fiery efficiency. In comparison, what does Spectre's explosion, and the ease in which it is achieved, say about Bond? Well, that winning is effortless for him. When faced with his most iconic and supposedly most dangerous of foes, Bond overcomes Blofeld with preposterous prowess. Bond escapes his bounds, saves the girl, defeats the villain and destroys his lair, all without any significant loss or weight to his actions. It deflates the tension when Spectre should be at its critical point. The villain has already been conquered, and at no expense to Bond, or the people he cares about. Yet Spectre still has 30 minutes of action left to run. When Bond is next faced with another seemingly impossible to escape from situation in the following act, what reason does the audience have to think that things should play out any differently? We expect Bond will win, easily, and with no cost to his character, as that is the precedent set by the previous action set piece. Contrast this with Demolition Man's opening fireball. Yes, I'm making a favourable point about Demolition Man in comparison to a film directed by Sam Mendes. If you disagree, fight me. In that film, Sylvester Stallone's aptly titled John Spartan is tricked into allowing a warehouse to explode by his rival, a notorious terrorist named Simon Phoenix. The lives of the very men and women Spartan was tasked to save are extinguished in the flames, placing the action into motion and setting the grudge match to take place over the resulting film. Although Demolition Man flubs its lines when it comes to readdressing this point beyond the narrative setup, the fireball serves purpose to the plot, the characters, and provides weight to the action. The consequences of the fireball show Spartan has lost against Phoenix, providing him with a physical and emotional score to settle in the resulting 2-hour film. Demolition Man may be a goofy Stallone slugfest, admittedly not without its charm.
I'm happy that you're happy, but the place where you're supposed to have the toilet paper, you got this little shelf with 3 seashells on it.
But succeeds in action cinema where Spectre fails both narratively and technically. This explosion simply means more, and I think you'll agree, looks cooler. See, not only is Spectre's second act capping explosion triggered so quickly as to leave audiences believing the construction team behind Blofeld's lair skipped half a dozen safety checks, but the way in which the action is blocked and photographed is noticeably uninvolved. Captured in a near-static flat-wide shot lacking any meaningful degree of dynamism, Bond is framed as a spectator of the action and, crucially, not as a participant. At this point, Spectre simply stops to allow the main character to observe the wreckage, unfazed and unchanged. Contrast this with the many explosions that rock the runtime of Mad Max Fury Road, all of them contributing to the action in a variety of unique ways. Despite the amount of explosives used or the size of the fireball, if the explosion provides no emotional resonance, then we are rendered spectators and not participants in the action. That is why the explosion in License to Kill resonates with us, where this does not. Not only does this violent tanker explosion punctuate Bond's success in his quest for vengeance, literally providing a visual metaphor for the character's explosive rage, but Bond is very much part of the action, scrambling from the blast over scorched rocks. The heat fell on his back, and as a result we care for his plight. This is dangerous, and so, even for a second, we believe Bond, hell, even Timothy Dalton might die. Thematically, it shows Bond nearly consumed by his own desire for retribution, nearly at the cost of his own life, a theme that is woven through the film's entire runtime. And it is this type of kinetic visual storytelling that Spectre lacks. Ultimately, the failure of Spectre's should-be show-stopping set piece is symptomatic of a larger issue. That despite the filmmaker's desire to make this a reference point for Craig's tenure as Bond, with story threads reaching as far back as Casino Royale, the resulting film is utterly devoid of meaning, weight, consequence, and thus tension. It says little about Bond on a character level that would lend itself to a dramatic setup, nor does it involve him in the world he inhabits. In fact, key pieces of action unfold out of view of the character, with little acknowledgement or awareness. You get the feeling that 007 is the titular Spectre, watching the narrative unfold from a distance of relative safety. And, as every action fan already knows,
don't look at explosions. They blow things up and then walk away. Who's got time to watch an explosion? There's cool guy errands that they have to walk to.